Shalom friends, Aaron here. Hopefully a quick video, just wanted to tell you something. I made, I don't know, probably like way too many videos last year talking about the experience we had with our daughter going into the hospital. And, the super quickest recap, she had, for unknown reasons, like we don't know. We were in the hospital with her for days. I was in the hospital with her for days, and she had her essentially her electrolytes drop dramatically to the point where she was having issues with her brain, and until they got her salts back up, as she was not responding to us in a normal way. I was not doing well, and it was very dangerous for her, medically speaking, to be in that state. And without care, she wouldn't have been all right. So the thing about the story is that we faced some pretty serious, uncalled for, unnecessary judgment. Really, unreasonable judgment because of our family size and the way that we live our lives. And I did sort of a recap of, I don't know, I might have done a dozen videos or something. I did it because I just wanted to share the whole story. It felt like it was important. I wasn't going to be taking anybody to court or anything like that. We just wanted to let people know about our experience. I think it was an important thing for us to do. And I wanted to do it while it was still really fresh, so I could give you all the details and share the emotion that was involved with it. But then I did a recap of all of those, dozen or whatever videos. And the title of that was First Do No Harm. And then Teresa did a video, sharing her take on the situation. Because I spent the days in the hospital with Madeline, and I was the one who was looked at with suspicion, I suppose I would say, without getting into all that. I'm not going to tell the story here, but I had to really battle with people who were judging me as being this terrible father and thinking of me the most awful things with no evidence. And even with evidence showing that the medical problem that our daughter had, we knew what it was. We didn't know why it came about, but we pretty quickly, that the first night, knew why she was in the state she was in. And then she suffered with some symptoms after they did some tests on her, including a lumbar puncture. It never revealed to me that she could be dealing with the results were like a really terrible headache, and that just really kept her down, and until that went away. Yeah, so how can I put it? I guess, watch those videos. It'll take you a long time. They're long. I don't know how. I don't even remember. It might have been 14 or something. Maybe it was only 9, 10, 11. I don't know, but it's a bunch, and they're like a half an hour long, each of them. It'll take you a while to get through it. It's like watching a TV series, and maybe not super interesting. I don't know, but I think it's a story worth hearing, what happened to us. And there was this idea that because we have a big family and we just live, differently. We don't have a television. They ask so many questions. It's hard to even think back now on all of the revealing questions that are asked in the process. And I'm just concerned about the health and well-being of our daughter. And, what I really needed to be fearful of and what not, and what the procedures they were doing could do to her. There's a lot of information that wasn't shared with me. And I was not even really treated like her father for days because they suspected that I had hurt my daughter. I don't even want to use the words in this video. It's all in the other videos, but why am I bringing it up? Because it's the very end of October 2019. This happened last year in October, about a year. And we were actually just, I don't even know why, earlier in the month thinking about it. We don't have it written on a calendar or anything. Just the realization, oh, that was about a year ago, and reflecting on it. And it was a very hard thing to go through. The day that this happened to her, she had been suffering with a headache. And we don't get headaches all the time. People get headaches occasionally. It's, that happens to people and happens to us sometimes, but it's not something common. Well, just a few nights ago, she had a headache, and, it was one that was really bothering her. And she was very, very upset about it. I don't want to use the words unreasonably upset, but, more so than the headache warranted. Just those physical symptoms that she was dealing with. And she actually started getting very upset about it to the point where she wasn't really breathing very well, almost like hyperventilating. And I had to just kind of really just pray and choose to be calm while I held her and asked her how she was feeling, what was going on, where her head hurt, and how long her head had been bothering her. We knew she had a headache for a little while, but, just kind of really trying to focus in on it and feeling this sort of tide, of fear rising in me. Now, I'm a very empathetic person. I don't know how to tell the whole story without getting into too many things, but and Teresa's definitely a really empathetic person. By personality type, that certainly bears out, and our experiences prove that. And it's reasonable for us to think that at least most of our sons and daughters are very empathetic people like we are. And again, empathy not meaning that you just feel bad for somebody, but you actually somehow, in a metaphysical sort of spiritual way, it's not a tangible thing, but you really do literally feel what other people are going through. And sometimes they don't have to tell you what they're going through. It's just they're carrying these feelings, and you feel it. And it can be confusing. So I've learned over many years to sort of do quick self-examinations of my own feelings and emotions, and conclude pretty quickly that I'm feeling somebody else's fear or sadness or whatever. And so I realized, okay, even though she's not speaking it, she's afraid. And it gets confusing when you're feeling, it's always confusing, I guess, potentially, but it can be really confusing when you're feeling the same emotions. So you have your fear in this case, and then I'm sitting there with my daughter and I'm trying to sort it out and feel, okay, well, I feel her fear as well. And I've got to lead her through this. I've got to help her through this. And I've got to understand better what's going on with her physically, not just emotionally. And then emotionally, not just physically. And so I just kind of scooped her up, carried her upstairs, sat down with her, and just talked to her a little bit and told her that it's okay to be afraid. Now, she never expressed that she was afraid, and reminded her what she already knew, just was telling her what I was feeling and understanding was going on. And that was that, hey, it was a year ago that you're in the hospital, and she doesn't remember a lot of it, and thank God. Thank God, some of it. Thank God she doesn't remember it. I said, but there are memories. and she also has these sort of underlying feelings about it that she might not have these real specific memories because of her mental state, but I mean it's in there. It's like emotional memory, I guess. I don't know, like there's and just telling her, like, you're gonna be okay. We've learned a lot. We were helping her right away. I mean, any time now. I mean, after that experience, if anybody has a headache, if I have a headache, we're taking in electrolytes like right away. There's some other things, but I'm not going to get into all that. But we've really kind of learned some things we can do to make sure that that's not the problem. Like, why you have a headache is because you're having your salts drop too low or whatever. I had to just kind of let her know that we can't leave our fears unspoken. We need to deal with them, because when we hold them in, when we don't acknowledge them, and I mean, look, from a Christian point of view, lay them down and let God have those fears, then like they can really steal our breath, be suffocating. And she was starting to feel that way and get overwhelmed by the fear. And I had to just kind of tell her, as part of explaining to her how we need to just let the fears go, we need to release them, that I feel fear too. And I set her up to lay down in the quiet room. Her big sister Isabel was making her some tea full of all kinds of healing herbs and things, and letting her know, after praying with her and praying for her, that I was going to come up and check on her several times. And while we were downstairs reading for the night, doing our nighttime reading together, we read the Bible and read stories, and reassuring her that whatever we read that night, that I would read it to her the next day, so she didn't miss out. And before we sat down as a family and read the next night. But when I sat downstairs before I started reading, after I had prayed with her and set her up to rest, just talked with Teresa a little bit, and was just talking about how, like, a year later, I'm not really recovered from that. I'm not done. It really affected me deeply to be... Look, in a nutshell, Teresa was bringing in amazing, healthy, healing foods. The kids were doing things to help her making food that they could bring to us, because they weren't even feeding us in the hospital. It was like the craziest thing, like all of these experiences piled up, and them babysitting me, not letting me be alone with my daughter. But all the while, I was just like so focused on nothing but what was necessary to take care of her. And I am not a perfect father. I fall short every day of what I want to be. But I'm not satisfied with that. And I'm always striving to be the best and better, not comparing myself to someone else, but man, who was I yesterday? Can I be better than that today? And I can say this for sure. I was taking good care of my daughter. And that was, the people who were thinking these terrible things about me had that right in front of them to see. I mean, if you're a parent, when you're watching somebody doing a good job being a parent, and when you're watching somebody doing a bad job being a parent, or maybe somebody's a good parent having a bad moment being a parent, whatever, you can recognize good parenting and bad parenting. And they had in front of them an example of somebody really striving to be a good parent. And yet they thought the most awful things about me and took away from me some of my rights at a very important time, and did not live up to their oath to first do no harm. And I've said it before in all those videos I did. We needed their help, and they did help. But they did so much harm to our daughter to me, to Teresa, to the rest of our family, and it was completely unnecessary. And a year later, she just had a headache. But she didn't have to have a long hospital stay either. Like, not as long as it was. It could have been a little shorter. And they didn't have to do the lumbar puncture. That was totally unnecessary. I mean, really, literally, totally unnecessary. Like, you can watch the videos, just follow the stories. That was not necessary. And they caused her a lot of pain and discomfort because of it. And then, they'd already cast their judgment about what kind of person I was. I mean, it's the whole package, I mean, I got a deep voice. I cut my hair like I'm a Marine because I'm losing it, not because I'm a tough guy. I grow my beard. I like my beard. Kids like my beard, I'm a nice guy. I'm not a hard guy. My family's big. Oh, it's different. We live differently. We do things differently. They treated me like garbage. So she just had a headache. It was a bad headache. And she's fine now. I mean, if anybody wants to know, it went away. We took care of her. We kept an eye on her. It went away. She's fine. Why did she have that ache? I don't know. I don't know why. But she was beginning to be overwhelmed by her fear. And her fear, me feeling her fear, helped to really let that fear bubble up in me. I had to fight it back down. Totally unnecessary. But we had to go through that. And that's in a lot of ways, our business, our industrialized medical business, this medical industry. There are people who run hospitals and they are filthy, stupid rich because people are sick. And as a parent, you don't get the choice. If a doctor, they could be a total quack. Anything people do, there are people who do it well and there are people who aren't good at it. They could be the worst doctor, but if that's the person that you just happen to have to deal with because you went into the hospital when your son or your daughter needed care, if they're making wrong choices, if they're making bad choices, if they're flat out wrong about what they're saying your kid needs, you don't get to say no to that. You don't have that right. How did we get there as a society? We have been sleeping. We have literally been asleep at the wheel. And there are literally medical kidnappings. I mean, they lock people up in psych wards. They make kids go through chemotherapy when they don't want to do it and their parents don't want them to do it. As a 42-year-old man, if I have cancer, and that'll change probably at some point, and I want to refuse chemotherapy, I have that right. A 17-year-old doesn't have that right. The parents of the 17-year-old don't have that right. I've known people who just could not continue with their chemotherapy. Some of them aren't here, and some of them still are. They had the ability to make that choice. The good parents, there's no such thing as perfect parents, but good parents know their kids. And they know what their kids can go through, more so than a doctor does. I don't care how good the doctor is. We've had some great doctors, different times, people who've been amazingly helpful. And we've had people who first did a big fat pile of harm unnecessarily because of prejudices and judgments and hubris, bad training. And it's really a shame. So are we afraid? No. I mean, fear is something that always wants to get in, and we have to, in whatever situation we're dealing with in life, we got to fight the fear back. We got to release it. We got to confess it. We got to deal with it. And if we do that, we can conquer it. We can have courage, and we can prevail over it. We can already see good. We believe the scriptures, and God is able and always working to do so, to take anything and everything, no matter how good or bad or ugly or our own fault or somebody else's harm that they mean to do to us or accidentally do to us. He takes it all, and he can use it for our good. If we love him and are called according to his purpose, we're answering that. We're actively seeking to be who he wants us to be, doing what he wants us to be. So we see that already in this situation, and we can see our son who was born with a heart condition, the experiences that we had there, preparing us, building a deeper relationship with our pediatrician so that she could really advocate for us, and all sorts of things as preparation. Some of the experiences I had when our son was in the hospital as an infant, being the one there taking care of him and looking after him as best I could at the time, preparing me for this experience and all of that stuff. It all ties together. It's all woven together. So I just want to end by saying, as I was thinking about how there was two doctors in particular there at the hospital when our daughter was there who were absolutely advocating for her and for me, for our family. And I said in the other videos, thank you. Wish I could remember your names. I got to find you in case I ever need to contact somebody. Like, you were just really amazing, and I thank you for that. But there were people there who had chosen to be our enemies, and had chosen, because they'd already cast judgments unnecessarily, unreasonably. They had chosen, and look, this is a real thing that we do as human beings. Like, they were trying to push me to prove that the judgments they'd already made were right judgments. And even though, if they had pushed me to the point where I broke, and it would have been completely illogical to say, well, see, that's why we judged you. That's what would have happened. And I was, I don't know how close I was to my breaking point. It was hard. It was a hard thing for me to go through. When I was reflecting on that over there on my couch before I read the other day, my little girl's upstairs, and she was afraid, and I was afraid of what could happen to our family and the difficulties and struggles we might have to go through because somebody judges us because we're different. And we're just needing your help, and instead you harm us. I was tempted to curse them. Not literally call down a curse, but say some ugly thing, those whatevers. But I couldn't speak the words. Instead, I realized, I need to love my enemies, and I need to pray for those who persecute me. And I stopped, and I just said to Teresa, who was sitting in the chair near me, I said, tempted to curse those people, but instead I'm going to pray for them. And I just stopped for a second before I read, and I just prayed out loud, and I asked God, and this is my prayer, that God would open their eyes. These people who harmed us emotionally and, harmed me by literally stealing from me at a time where I needed them, my rights, to look after my daughter, and really, literally did her harm, physically and emotionally. Pray that they would have their eyes open, and that they'd no longer be so ignorant, and that the experience that they had with us would be truly eye-opening for them. And maybe the very last thing I'd like to say is it just reminded me, as I had been kind of thinking, a week or two prior to this, headache event that we just had, this little headache. It was just a headache, but it turned into an event because of what happened to us a year ago, Thinking about all that stuff that happened a year ago, and then having this headache and all the fear rise up in us for a minute, and having to kind of fight that back. I was thinking about all the negatives, because there was a lot of them. There was a lot of really bad stuff going on in terms of how we were being treated and the negative emotions involved, But kind of one of the last things I thought about the next day when I was talking to Teresa in the morning was that really just before we left the hospital, there's two doctors that were really very helpful for me. One of them, I talked to him at length, and he had to be careful about what he said, and he was very professional. I don't know for sure, but I don't think he crossed any lines he shouldn't in terms of whatever's expected of him by his colleagues. And then another doctor who was there with him all the time, who spent some time with Madeline and playing with her and talking with her and checking her out, did never really say much to me. But just before I left, she, with a great deal of honest, real respect, came in with my discharge papers, shook my hand, and told me something along the lines, I don't remember. If you watch the videos I made, I remembered then exactly what she said about how it was really good to meet me. It was a special, it was a pleasure, I don't know, whatever, but something like that. And it was really heartfelt, and she meant it. This person who had been looked at like I might be a monster. And then to have her stand there and say what she said, like the power in our words and the way we communicate to people and our tone, because it's not just the words that she spoke, like she took a respectful posture, the tone in her voice, her inflection. We communicate, even though, whatever they say, 70, 80%, whatever, of communication is nonverbal. But when we think about what we say, it's so much of that, so little of what we say, the way we communicate is actually about the words that we're speaking. It's about the way we speak the words. We have to be very mindful of that. And it was a really powerful reminder for me, because it's something I need. I need to be reminded of it. How we communicate with each other is so essential. And I had been hammered with negativity, like deep, terrible negativity for days. That brief moment just before we went home, look, it didn't heal at all. Okay, like it wasn't like this like magic elixir or something. But wow, it was way more powerful than the sum of most of that negativity that I had been hammered with before I left. And like I'm so thankful to her, of course, but thankful to God, because like I absolutely, without knowing it as much as I understand it now, I didn't know it that much at the time, but I needed that. Don't feel like your positive words don't matter. Don't think lightly of that. Like if you can say something to encourage somebody, do it. Do it. Like, I don't know. We can't really know how much damage we can do with the way we communicate with people, and how powerful and healing and helpful our words and our encouragement can be. So if you know somebody in your life who needs to be encouraged, for goodness sakes, like, do it. Encourage them, So, just some reflections on, that event that we had with her daughter, Maddie, going to the hospital last year, a year ago. Still a part of who we are, always will be. That experience was, it was one of those not like life-altering experiences, but one that really, you feel the change. It really has a long-lasting effect on you. And for us, not just, any individual, but for our family as a whole. And we're trusting God to turn it all into good. So, those of you who treated me like, to say the least, no, I don't hate you. And I just pray that your eyes will be open. And to everybody watching, and to those people whose eyes will hopefully have their scales fall off and no longer be so ignorant. Shalom. Until next time.